Hey, and welcome to the video. I just wanted to speak a little bit about my journey with Linux over the last 12 or 13 years. I had been using Windows for a very long time. I grew up on Windows. I started with Windows 95, then moved to Windows 98, then to 2000. I've used ME, Windows XP. Unfortunately, I have used Vista, although now that we look back on it, Vista was better than, you know, it was perceived to be when it first came out due to drivers and, a bunch of different other things. Then I used Windows 7 for a very long time. And Windows 8 came out, and I just decided to give it up. When I got my first adult job or adult paying job or whatever, you know, where I started making some actually decent money, I decided to build my first real gaming computer, which had an FX 8350. And we all know how bad those chips were. Maybe some of the younger folks don't really know. I like AMD. I've always been a little bit of an AMD fanboy. Not like a huge one, but yeah, I've always had an AMD processor and a NVIDIA GPU until recently. And a couple years ago, I got my first AMD graphics card, which was an RX 6800, because I had the GTX 970, which was a wonderful card. If I had to rate it, it would be I'd rate it a 3.5 out of 4, and it was actually quite a very good card. I even got a rebate due to a class action lawsuit. That's neither here nor there. And then I had the 1080 Ti, which we all know was the greatest of all time. That was a wonderful card. And then I moved to AMD, but that's neither here nor there. So I was looking at alternatives because I had just been sick of Windows, and I really just didn't want to use it anymore. I just didn't feel like using it anymore. I didn't feel like Windows was going in the right direction. I had been using Windows for years and years and years. I had seen it just get better and better and better as time went on. It's always had its problems, but, you know, I was willing to live with some of those issues just because it worked. And it was Windows. And, it's just what I had come to expect from Windows is that, you would just download stuff and it would just work. But they started changing it, and then it just took this massive UI overhaul with the start button, just completely turning into like kind of like what seemed like a mobile OS, and that didn't really sit right with me. Although Windows 8 under the hood wasn't a complete failure, just you could just tell like what was going on at the company. Didn't really seem like it was all that great. So I decided to give Linux a try. And I have used Mac OS, and my father's computer had Mac OS. He loves Mac OS because it just works, and he just basically just gets on his computer and checks his email, old person stuff. I suppose that's happening to me, but I'm not that old yet. Just wait, you'll get there. So I tried Linux, and to tell you the truth, it's really not that bad. You can move stuff around. You can make the bar hide away. You can have like wobbly windows, stuff like that. You can go back and forth like that there. That's just built into the OS. If you want, you can have like a little Mac bar down here, which is Cairo Dock. I've been using Cairo Dock for years and years. I love it. It's so you can just do whatever you want. But when I first started using Linux Mint, and the reason why I chose Linux Mint is that they move very conservatively. They don't try to reinvent the wheel. And I myself am a fairly conservative person. Not like with everything, but at least when it comes to making decisions. And over the years, Linux Mint has basically stayed the same. And it's really only gotten better. They haven't made huge changes like you've seen, like with GNOME and Wayland and KDE, stuff like that, where it's constantly moving, or you like with Arch, where it's just constantly moving. It's just a constantly, and a lot of that happens in Linux, and sometimes that stuff breaks. And I'm the kind of person that when I turn on my computer, for the most part, you know, all Linux OSs will have their issues at some point, which is just, and computers in general will have issues. And, if you're the computer guy, people will ask you to, like, take a look at their computers, which I guess comes with the territory. It's just kind of fucking annoying. But it is what it is, right? It just comes with the territory. And with gaming, it's been at first, it was kind of a real drag because all my friends would say, "Oh, I'm playing this game, and do you want to play that game?" And it's like, "Oh, sorry, dude, I use Linux," and they're like, "Oh, well, just use Windows," and it's just, no, I don't want to do that. I'm one of those people where I just don't care if it doesn't run on Linux. I don't play it. And some people can't do that. They can't give up that game. Like some people want to play Battlefield 6, or they want Valorant, you know, or whatever, and they just can't give it up. So they're just not willing to switch. So, which is fine. That's perfectly fine. Use whatever you want. It's your computer, it's your hardware. You paid for it. Install whatever operating system on it that works for you. But as far as Linux goes, I've had problems. Some of the problems that I've had are like, most people leave their computers like on standby, especially desktops, just because of the startup times are, a bit faster. It's just a habit that I have, and every now and then, like, you'll have like a power outage and something with the system will become corrupted, and it just simply won't boot. So you have to go in and, figure it out exactly what it is in the boot up process that didn't work, and then you have to look through all the little lines of code and everything, and then because I'm not a computer guru, even though to people that don't use computers very often, I seem like I am, but I'm really not. I'm just a regular user. I guess that's why I'm a Linux Mint user. But, or I have completely broken the system by, some nights I've just been lazy or tired and looked up a search on the internet and just copied and pasted a few commands that I shouldn't have and just broke my system. So that's why I keep a backup USB with a fresh install of Linux Mint on it, so I can just install it, And I've done that more times than I care to admit, which makes me seem like a complete idiot. But you know, sometimes you just have to fuck around and find out, and that's kind of the fun of it. As long as you keep the OS separate from your home drive, that is probably one of the biggest things I could say is keep your OS partition and your home drive completely separate. Even if it's on a different drive, And I would recommend keeping it on a separate drive, but some people can't, they either can't afford it or they don't want another drive, that's perfectly fine. But that's what I would recommend. And anyway, I have seen Linux just get, especially Linux Mint, just get better and better and better. A lot of these things, like that you'll see, like in the terminal commands and stuff, you used to not be able to get FlatHub or Flatpaks in the software store. That used to never be a thing. So you would have to Google the command lines to, install Flatpaks and everything like that. And to tell you the truth, I had just become so accustomed to doing that stuff that that's just what I did. But I really honestly don't even know how long it's been that you can just install a lot of that stuff in from the software center, and it's just wonderful. I mean, Linux Mint has just they just keep on keeping on. It's a small team of people. I think it's like 11 people, and they just they move very conservatively, and they try their best to make sure that things get better, but has mostly stayed the same. It's been absolutely wonderful, and I can't really recommend it enough. I know there's more things that I could cover, and I know that my posting's been a little bit slow, but because of the snowstorm, I haven't been able to get a whole lot of stuff done at work, and some people just don't have power, and it's just in general been not very fun. I've got some more videos coming down the pipeline. If you have any questions or you'd like me to cover anything in specific, I'd be more than happy to take a look at it. Anyway, thank you for listening to me ramble on, and see you in the next one. Peace.